Hey guys, so today's video is going to be slightly different, but not really. As you might already know, I write horror novels, so I obviously read quite a few horror novels as well. It can be hard for me to find good horror novels, mostly because I've just read so many at this point that I feel like I've kind of seen it all, or read it all. So I thought I'd talk about some of my favorites I've read over the years, so if you're maybe looking for new recommendations, maybe you can come away with some ideas as to what to read next. So the first is pretty obvious. A lot of people love Stephen King, and I'm no exception. My two favorites of his are Pet Sematary and Carrie. I'll be honest though, it's really hard for me to see Carrie as a horror novel. It's more like dark fantasy. I'm not really sure. But I really enjoyed reading it, as well as Pet Sematary. I swear Pet Sematary has influenced my own writing so much. I did a review on the newest movie adaptation, which I'll link below in the description if you're interested. I have been meaning to reread the book ever since the movie came out, but haven't quite gotten to it yet. One day I will. Also, another really good Stephen King book I thought I'd mention is The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. These are probably my top 3 if you want to read Stephen King but aren't quite sure where to start. The next book is 172 Hours on the Moon by Johan Harstad. I think this book was pretty popular a few years back. I saw a lot of people talking about it, and for a good reason. If you remember the movie Apollo 18 from a few years ago, it's kind of like that, but much better. In the book, NASA hasn't been to the moon in 40 years, which might be true in real life, but hopefully that'll change soon. In order to get the next generation excited about space travel, they hold an international contest to select 3 teenagers to go to the moon. But once they get there, strange things start to happen. I won't say anything else so I won't spoil it, but if that sounds like your thing, definitely give it a try. The next series is probably one of my favorites of the last decade. I absolutely love this entire series, and that is The Merciless by Daniel Vega. I wasn't even sure if I was going to read this when it first came out because it's about exorcism, and I'm pretty selective about the exorcism stories that I invest my time in. But I bought it on my Kindle on a whim because it was on sale and ended up reading the whole thing in one sitting. It took me about 3 hours, which is really fast for me. A couple years later, when the sequel, The Merciless 2, came out, I bought physical copies of both the books just so I would have them. The third book, The Merciless 3, I think it's The Merciless 3, Origins of Evil. It's technically a prequel and it's not as good, but The Merciless 4, Last Rites, just came out last year and this is also really good. Daniel Vega has a few other books out, and the ones I've read, especially Survive the Night, are all really good. I cannot say enough good things about the series. The next book is The Forest of Hands and Teeth by Carrie Ryan. And I know right away that this isn't going to be everyone's cup of tea. It is a zombie novel, and just like exorcism books and stories, I'm very selective about the zombie novels that I read. This one's about a girl named Mary, awesome name by the way, who lives in a small village after the zombie apocalypse. A fence around the village keeps people safe from the zombies that roam the woods. But one day when the fence breaks, Mary and her friends must journey through the woods and escape with their lives. I read this one weekend a few years ago when I was home alone and it was nighttime when I read it, so every little noise freaked me out. I will say that this book does have quite a bit of romance in it as well, so if that's not your thing, then you may want to give it a pass. But it also does have a decent amount of gore, and personally I loved the blending of romance and gore. So if you enjoy both these things, or at least don't mind the romance aspect, definitely check this one out. It's the first book in a trilogy, but the other 2 weren't as good. They follow different characters than the first one, but I won't say who because that would kind of spoil it. So those are all the books I consider my absolute favorites. But I also want to talk about a few that aren't necessarily favorites, but that I still really enjoyed and recommend. The first is a series called The Monstrumologist. It's written by Rick Yancey, who also wrote The Fifth Wave, which was turned into a movie a few years back. The story is told in diary entries and follows a young boy named Will, who is an apprentice to a monstrumologist who studies monsters. You should give this book a try if you like period pieces because it takes place in the 1800s, I believe, and it is very engaging and very gory if you like gore. I believe there are 4 books in the series. I only read the first 3, but the 2 sequels are also worth reading as well. The next book is called Feed by Mira Grant. It's in a series as well. I don't know if it's a trilogy or not, but I only read the first book. It's a zombie novel as well, but I wouldn't call the situation a zombie apocalypse because society is still functioning. The story follows 2 bloggers who start digging into why the zombie outbreak started in the first place. The ending is kind of surprising, but that's all I'll say. Also, I absolutely love the cover of this book. It's nice and simple, but really gets you curious as to what the book is going to be about, which is what a good cover should do. The next one is called Diary of a Haunting by M. Verano. It's also told in diary entries, and in a lot of ways it's like a typical haunted house story, but it's told so well and in such an engaging way that I have to recommend it. There is a sequel to this book. I think it's called Possession, but I haven't read it yet. The next series is Rot and Ruin by Jonathan Mayberry. It's technically horror, but it's more action-oriented than the others, and technically falls into that zombie apocalypse story. The main character is a teenage boy named Benny who needs a job and takes one as a zombie hunter because that's what his brother does. At first, Benny just assumes that they're going to go out into the wilderness and hack up zombies mindlessly, but the truth turns out to be much different than expected. There are 4 books in this series, at least 4 main ones, and I think some novellas as well, and then more books in the series later that follow different characters. The books do kind of lose steam as they go on, but they're still worth checking out. I think at one point there was supposed to be a movie based on this book, but I haven't really heard anything about it lately and I can't find anything, so I'm not really sure what happened with that. The next one is called The Replacement by Brenna Yovanov. It's not technically horror, more dark fantasy, but it is really good, so I thought I'd include it here. It kind of reminds me of the urban legend of changelings, which I've talked about before, which are the babies of some sort of paranormal creature that are switched with human babies to take their place. Brenna Yovanov has several other books out, and they're all pretty good, but this one was probably my favorite of hers. So if you're into foreign horror or vampires at all, you've probably heard of the book Let the Right One In, which was also turned into a movie in its native Sweden and remade here in the US as Let Me In. That book was written by John Ajvide Lindqvist, which I'm probably not pronouncing right. I'm very sorry. I should know that. I have a Swedish last name too. That book was enjoyable, but one of his others that I wanted to mention was Little Star. The story follows 2 young girls. One goes on a Swedish singing competition, sort of like American Idol, and becomes famous from that. The other is a devoted fan who befriends the young star. But when they meet up, this pairing becomes a match made in hell. The next book is Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach, which I also really hope I'm pronouncing correctly. This started out as a creepypasta, and I love creepypastas. If you don't know what creepypastas are, think of them as scary stories told around the campfire, but instead of being spread around campfires, they're spread via the internet. Pen Pal, like a lot of the classic creepypastas, has its flaws, but it's so creepy the whole way through that I had to include it. The penultimate book on this list is actually a novella, but it's a classic and has been credited with kicking off the modern zombie lore, and of course that is I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. The story follows Robert Neville, the last man on Earth, surrounded by vampires. George A. Romero is said to have used this story as inspiration for his movie Night of the Living Dead, which went on to provide a mold for the modern zombie film. And one last novel series, I can't leave this video without talking about one of the classics from my childhood, and of course, that is Goosebumps. This is one of the series that really got me into horror when I was a kid, and I remember reading them whenever I could, which was not easy because my mom did not like them. When I had to go grocery shopping with her, I would just sit in the book aisle for hours reading Goosebumps books. This is also a convenient time for me to add that I actually met R.L. Stine at a writing conference a couple of years ago, and it was awesome. A couple of these books are autographed too. This is a great series to not only get kids into horror, but reading as well. So now I want to mention a couple of books that aren't actually novels, but they're worth reading, and I wanted to put them on this list. The first is a nonfiction book called Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Zombies by Matt Moguk, which again, I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. This book details the history of zombies in literature and film, as well as what might happen if a real zombie outbreak occurred. This book was really helpful to me when I was writing my own zombie novel, State of Emergency, a few years back, which you can buy on Amazon. Link is in the description. And the last two books on this list take us back to Creepypasta. The Creepypasta collection was put together by a guy right here on YouTube who goes by Mr. Creepypasta and compiles some of the most disturbing creepypastas on the internet. There's also a second volume if the first just wasn't enough for you. And I think that's just about it. This video went on a lot longer than I expected, so I hope you got some new recommendations. Let me know your favorite horror novels in the comments below. I'm always on the lookout for more recommendations too. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and share it. And for more dark content, I hope that you will consider subscribing. Don't forget, my own horror novella, The Revenants, comes out on July 9th, and there's a link in the description where you can get more information and pre-order if you like. Thanks for watching and have a creepy day. Bye guys.